Right, welcome back. So let's finish up Boundin and talk about its third and final act, which will be our fourth and final act of this week. So I might repeat some things here that I was saying earlier, but it's because it's the most concrete example of the problems with Boundin's narrative format. Let's go with that. So we've seen this really beautiful, expressive change. And the world will continue to change along with the mood. That doesn't change. I said change like 5 times there. That will stay consistent. But here we get to the climax of the film, which is signaled by the entrance of a jackalope, a mythological creature to begin with. And he appears out of the blue, but he literally brings light back into the frame. It's a very cool moment. He has a beam of light focused on him for no apparent reason, but hey, it's already talking to animals. And so he hops in, and as he hops in, the light expands, and the world starts going back to the way it was. And part of that is that the song and the narration kicks in again. So it's Boundin's equivalent of Junior's return in Luxo Junior, in that it kind of brings happiness and energy back into the frame. After that, though, we get to the climax, which is a scene comprised entirely of dialogue. And so it's worth noting, just because of that significant difference with the rest of the Pixar short canon, and that we do have a scene comprised entirely of dialogue, and so it's worth seeing how it works. So while it is not a normal scene by any means, in that it is talking to animals, and it's still put to song, and it's still rhyming, it is in fact a conversation. It is a back and forth. And so the strengths of it are that the message within it is very sweet and very inspiring. It's about kind of rebounding from our lowest points in our lives. That's all well and good and great and well done. But it does have the other difference, though, is that it is a wise old creature imparting that wisdom to a young creature. While not a new form in any ways, we see that in many books and movies, and it is a perfectly legitimate and clear and well done convention. It's not very Pixar, and it kind of shows the strength of what is very Pixar, in that when you have the silent storytelling, you get actions and you experience fear and anticipation and warmth, and you experience that all with the characters as it unfolds in real time. In this scene, you get lectured at. Not obnoxiously, but you do get lectured at. You get told how to feel and how to respond. And there's the difference, because it just adds this element of distance between us and the narrative. And that since we can't experience it for ourselves, we have to be told it. And there's the problem. And so does the lamb. He also has to be told it. And the thing is that if he then went out and proved the point, you'd kind of avoid this kind of problem, because it would reinforce what has been said along with the narrative, so you don't have to so you get proof along with the argument. But it's a short film, and we don't really have a lot of time to do that. So all that ends up doing is that the lamb just ends up listening to the jackalope. And that's the big change. That's the climax. It's not very dramatic. So that is why I have some problems with Boundin. I don't think they deep six it or show any lack of care or thought or quality. It's just a disagreement with their form of storytelling. I think you get a more emotional reaction without the dialogue, or with dialogue that is reinforced with action. And that being said, you get a bit of a coda that does kind of save it in that regard, because we shift back into a more Pixar-like style after the conversation, in that the song continues, but the dance kind of turns into this carousel shot that shows off the entire world continuing to change along with the seasons. So it's very atmospheric, it's very expressive, it goes back to what Boundin does best. And also it's cool because this is a shot that's kind of impossible for hand-drawn animation. And Lucky points out in the commentary how the computer made it easier in the shot and more effective to have natural elements, so you get to play with nature a bit, which is always fun. And you get to have rain and snow. This was snow before Frozen. And this actually does physicalize the jackalope's lesson a little bit. So we do get a little bit of that proof I was talking about. And so we also get a return back to the happy world before, and we get proof of this because as the lamb dances, so does his community. So as long as the lamb loves himself, the community loves him, and everything is good. And so the jackalope has helped to solve all the problems in this world, and we go back to the way it was in this very optimistic fashion, which is great. I actually really like that. I've talked about earned happy endings. I think that's a happy ending, and I think in many ways they did try and earn it. However, it is mostly through listening to our elders than proving it ourselves. And so later films will build on this idea, build on the concept, build on characters learning to love themselves and outsiders being treated well, and worlds changing along with our characters, but then adding action on top of them so that we don't need the jackalope to come in and save us. We figure out everything ourselves. But before I end, I do want to talk about Reboundin' and the theme, and that it is one of the easiest ways to tell this story and this theme, and it does really work to get the story across. And so what can be learned from Boundin is the easy way of telling one of these stories as it sounds telling it. And so now that we understand what they're going for, we're going to see more experimental ways of going about it. And so in the next couple of films, Pixar will relearn how to tell a story visually, and apply it to the same heart-wrenching material included in Boundin. And I love it. I love what Boundin sets up, and so let's think fondly upon Boundin as we move forward. And so next week, let's talk Partly Cloudy. So I was figuring out where I wanted to stop there, and I think that's a good place. So next week, we're going to talk about Partly Cloudy, which I have the biggest soft spot for. I love next week's film. I just love it. And so please go watch it. It'll make your day. It's so sweet. And we'll get to see them do some really interesting things. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you next week.